the background one, please?
Hello, once again, witches and warlocks, and welcome back to our Sabrina Chilling Adventures of Sabrina recap. And today we're going to be talking about the holiday episode, which is called A Midwinter's Tale. And once again, I have with me the beautiful and amazing and wonderful and the best person in the world, Candace McAfee.
Good Yule.
Good Yule. You're adorable. And I guess let's just get straight into it. If you guys have any feelings, let us know in the chat, and we'll definitely try to respond to you. I see you, Ashley. Welcome. Glad to have you. And let's start right at the top. So we get a scene at the very beginning that's a mall Santa scene. And Sabrina's there. She's a little girl, and the casting, unfortunately, you don't get to see it that much, and I'm hoping they bring her back later because the casting is amazing. Not only on the young Sabrina, but also really great on young Susie. And Susie's there with her Aunt Hilda and Susie's dad, which is like a weird pairing, kind of within itself. And they go sit on Santa's lap, and Susie's really cute. She says that she wants a truck like her dad, which is like definite foreshadowing. Even as a little girl, she's got like the short haircut. She definitely knows who she is from a young age. And poor Sabrina tells us that she just wants to see her mom, which is kind of a big theme in the episode. And then we jump forward in time, and we see that the Spellmans are all together, and they're setting up what Sabrina calls the Christmas tree, and she's quickly corrected by Zelda that it's a Yule tree. The baby's still there, and Hilda says some comment like, "Oh, for someone who doesn't believe in any of this stuff, you sure did get a lot of presents for yourself." And she's all like, "No, they're for the baby." Letitia, what do you think about all this stuff?
So first of all, they're not. They're if it's for the baby, it's technically for Zelda because Zelda's Christmas gift to herself is clearly the child. You know, so that's number one. Number two, something else that I really thought was interesting. So upon second watch, I noticed that sitting to the left-hand side of Santa in foreshadowing is like a little boy, like a little figure of a little boy, and his face looks very shiny. So we can come back to that later if you want to talk in sequence.
No, I didn't.
That was something that I noticed. Yeah.
Interesting. Ashley in the chat says that she thought the casting was really good for the younger actors as well. And she said like a good point is that it's got to be rough for actors who are playing Santa because they probably do get questions or like requests like that sometimes. It's like, what do you even tell a kid? It's such an awkward position to be in.
Yeah, it's terribly sad.
Yeah. Tom,
I love that Hilda is the one who takes Sabrina to see Santa. Because like Zelda would obviously never take her. So Hilda's there like, I'm making sure that you have all of your cultures, dear. Like she's making sure there's representation.
She's such a Hufflepuff. It's insane.
I know. So sweet.
Tom says this episode has a lot of different things going on. I agree with that.
Something I noticed though, to go back to Hilda, like, you know, definitely a lot of things going on in this episode. One of the first things that I noticed just about our core cast of characters is that Hilda is like coming alive. Like I need to know who Dr. Cerberus is and what he's doing to her because she has beautiful, colorful makeup on. She's got brighter clothes on. She has little curls in her hair that like her hair looks more kind of well thought out rather than kind of just being on her head. Like she looks more glamorous. You know what I mean? Like she looks like she's starting to kind of cut loose. And I think that's kind of following that same story that we got of the two sisters in the Batty Bat episode. You know what I mean? Like I feel like she's kind of blossoming like a little flower. I'm very excited for her in season 2.
She's the cutest and the sweetest, and every moment she's on screen, I adore her for sure. And I'm with you, like Dr. Cerberus and the whole love interest thing with her is like one of the things I'm excited the most about next season. And we can definitely talk about the trailer a little bit more towards the end, but you see some of that in the trailer as well. So I think that that's going to be like a theme that we have going on, and hopefully nothing derails that because I'm still nervous as hell about that plot line.
Same. If he hurts her, I'll kill him.
Ashley also said something about what I was going to talk about next, which is the like, oh yeah, how are we going to keep this baby secret type thing? her plan is terrible. She's just kind of like, oh no, she's a lost spellman, like just like you. No one's gonna think about it.
Part of me is like, is that how you got Ambrose? Like, we still don't have any history on Ambrose. So I'm just like, is Ambrose just a found baby too? Is he even actually a spellman? Like, is there going to be a whole other storyline that comes out? You know, talking about, oh, well, you know, Ambrose too was like a kidnapped child, but Zelda was just like, this is mine now. Like, what?
I mean, not jumping too far ahead, but we're assuming everybody saw the episode. That could be another reason why she kind of was like, you got to get out of the house, like later on in the episode.
True, true.
Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
So Sabrina sees an old picture of her parents on the tree, and she gets sad that they aren't around, which is pretty, I would guess, normal for someone dealing with the holidays.
Of course.
Hilda is trying to cheer her up in her typical fashion. She wants to like do holiday things to take her mind off of it. And Zelda kind of again is like, no, what we're doing is we're lighting this log so that spirits don't come into this house. And they do light the Yule log and do a little solstice blessing, which is really quick, and I thought it was well done and good.
Yeah.
And then Ambrose kind of takes Sabrina to the side and is like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's up with you?
Mm-hmm.
Says like, oh, my friends are still adjusting to me being a witch, and like I miss my mom, and also I saw her when I was in limbo, and like, do you want to do a seance with me? This is like the first of several people she asked this question to.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of not super interested this time.
No, not interested at all.
Hey, Jason and Bokes, welcome to the room. Zelda is a good mom. He's mine now. Bokes says. She does see herself as like a mother figure, and in a lot of ways she is kind of a good mom. I think you need a little bit of Hilda and a little bit of Zelda for sure.
I agree. Like, they're both, like, they're two sides of one coin. And I think that, you know, each of them kind of has their own purpose in Sabrina's life. And like, it's funny because like there's a couple times throughout the show and up to and including this episode where like Zelda seems shocked that no one in the family believes that she's, you know, there for family. Like, everyone's just kind of like, yeah, you're not going to help me. Like, oh, you're not going to tell me what I want to hear. Like, people kind of just like kind of cast her aside because she's always such a bummer. And
Yeah.
she super takes offense to it. And I'm like, well, if you don't want to be a bummer on Zelda, then maybe tighten up a little bit, you know? Because like people think that she's just going to be awful about things.
It's so hard for me because we watched this episode together, and I relate to this woman so much more than anybody should. Like, I feel her. Like, I get it, dude. And like, I'll be the first to tell people, like, listen, I suck sometimes, but I'm also like a good person. I won't do terrible things to you, but I am kind of an asshole. Like, fair warning.
That's true. I can see that. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, she always kind of like, I like her save the day attitude. You know what I mean? And I like the fact that she's not invincible. You know what I mean? There are things that hem her up. She's still like a very three-dimensional character, despite kind of showing this kind of tough outer layer. Like, she has this gooey interior. You know what I mean? Which I love. Like, I really, really enjoyed I know we talked about this in our previous conversations, and I really liked the juxtaposition this time of Christianity and Catholicism versus Satanism, right? And witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously before, you know, we were talking about how they kind of just like swap them, you know what I mean? How they're completely interchangeable. So you're heaven bent on doing something instead of hell bent or whatever. I feel like it actually kind of works in this episode. I love the examination of the way that they celebrate and the things that people are feeling during that time. You know what I mean? So you have, you know, this kind of growing togetherness. You have Sabrina missing her mom. It's like, it's very traditional. Like, even though it's a show and an episode about, you know, satanic worship and pagan worship, it's a very traditional episode. Like, you know, obviously next we see, you know, we cut to Mrs. Wardwell, and she's in her study or whatever in her office, and she's praying. Like, she's praying to the Dark Lord, and she's like, you know, Dark Lord, like, do you hear me? Are you here with me? Like, where are you? You know, it's the holy season, you know, and I'm supposed to be here with you, and like, you're not around. Like, where have you gone? And I feel like that's definitely like struggling with your faith or your belief system is like a cornerstone of Christmas movies. You know what I mean? Where like there's a miracle that comes at the end, or like in The Preacher's Wife, you know, there's an angel that comes down, or in Miracle on 34th Street, you know, we believe in Santa and have a reason to. You know what I mean? Like, I love how that kind of flows together. And I see Tom in the chat is saying, well, Christmas is adapted from pagan tradition, so it feels appropriate. And I agree. Like, I love that they keep that same kind of even keel going throughout this series. You know, it was awesome. Nice touch.
Yeah, and I think it's good too because just like Sabrina's life, you get a bit of both. You know, like that's very how her life is. She has her human friends, she has her Christmases that she's had forever, but now she also has all her witchy stuff. So you're getting both of them, and it works really well for a show like this. And they kind of did it like how a Doctor Who would do a Christmas special, where I don't think that the stuff that happens in this episode is going to be terribly involved with the stuff that happens further on later, which is why we didn't see some of the important characters. Other than Letitia, that stuff is going to carry forward, but very little of this is going to affect that, and that's like very Christmas special Doctor Who is what came to mind. Ashley was saying in the chat that she likes that real friends are like the best friends, like people who keep it real like that, because it helps you not do dumb things, which I like to think that maybe people feel that way, but not everyone feels that way. I look at the two sisters kind of like, it's a you got the Hufflepuff and then you got the Slytherin. So they kind of always balance each other out. And I have a lot of friendships like that too with people like Delisha, for instance, who is just like, she's a total Hilda. She's sweet, baking cookies, and absolutely just like a ray of sunshine all the time. And it's nice to be around somebody who kind of balances you out. You know, you get to have your own vibe and do your own thing, and then have somebody who understands you and appreciates you for being a little different than them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like I love that the kind of dichotomy of the two of those characters. And on a larger scale, like, you know, when you look down at like the younger cast, right? I'm wondering, like, you know, I can't wait to understand more the role that these friends are going to play for Sabrina, because obviously we know that, you know, Prudence and the Weird Sisters, you know, are her girls. It's like her girl squad. When she's, you know, in her witch world, and when she's in, you know, the human world, she has Roz and Susie and sometimes Harvey. So I kind of wonder, like, you know, what role are those girls going to fill? Because right now they really haven't gotten into any like hijinks specifically together after finding out about Sabrina being a witch. And they, in the beginning of this episode, one of the things that made me a little sad was that they seemed a little scared of her. You know what I mean? And I understand why they're scared, but for me, it was more surprising that Roz was scared than Susie. But either way, both of them have already tangled with the dark side. They've already kind of looked into that world. Obviously, Roz has her cunning, and Susie has her visions of Dorothea, which didn't come up in this episode, which was interesting. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, what role are they going to fulfill? Are they each going to be like a mini version of Hilda and Zelda? Like, is one of them going to be more strict and straight-laced, and the other one going to be more kind of free-flowing and free-willed? Or are they going to take on a completely new meaning to Sabrina as the show goes on? Like, this was a very kind of transitional episode in that, you know, we're kind of seeing them all together after, you know, this giant announcement, this big change that they all thought was going to completely shake up their lives. And we kind of get to see it work out a little bit, you know, for the first time.
For sure. Interestingly, I don't think that they're going to be the Hilda and the Zelda. Who I think the Hilda and the Zelda are Harvey and Nick Scratch.
Interesting. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I can see that.
I think it's pretty clear which one's which.
Of course.
But I think they might be the ones who are more like the two sisters.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the office. Like you said, she was praying and she's like, why aren't you speaking to me? I did this for you. Like, where are you? And then kind of, it was funny to me. I don't know if it's funny to anyone else, but she got Stolas like stuffed and put it in like, because I honestly think to her, just like talking at the bird is as useful as having a response for the bird. So like, needed him for. And as she's doing all that stuff, like Sabrina like walks into the office as she's like, Dark Lord, give me meaning.
Yep, give me a sign.
Yeah, so she comes in and once again, at least she's straight up this time. She asks, hey, can I borrow your Book of the Dead? Here's why I want it. She tells the untrustworthy, sketchy, like darty-eyed lady, like, oh, I want to contact my mother. And this lady's literally like,
yes, do it. Yes.
The whole time. And you're like, come on, man.
Don't you see her with your eyes? Like, she's like, she just does that. That's just the thing she does. She's just eccentric. Like, what? Oh, I love it. She's wonderful. Yes, serving all of that face. Yes.
So, and she agrees to let her have the book. She's like, listen, if I don't give you the book, you're just going to get your friends to give you the book. So here, take your book. And so Sabrina goes and asks her two terrified friends, hey, so I'm doing this seance. Do you guys want to help me? Is it like too soon? Is it too weird? And one of them's like weird, and the other one's like too soon. So she's like, oh, okay.
Roz is like, definitely too soon. Susie's like, none of that. The whole time I'm watching this, right? I'm like thinking in my head, like all I can hear is Frozen. Do you want to have a seance? That's all I'm hearing in my head. I'm just like, why are you asking these terrified girls if they want to conduct business with evil? Like,
she doesn't want
to learn your lesson.
Doesn't want to ask the Weird Sisters. Why would she? She's, I don't know, man.
Like if the Weird Sisters couldn't handle a simple like burial resurrection thing, like Charm from last season, what makes you think these civilians are going to be able to handle a fucking seance? Are you kidding me? Or the seance she did by herself where she had the psychopomps all around her and shit. Like they're not ready for that. She's like, let's level you up to like level 50. I know you're at 3 right now, but we're going to give you some XP and get you up there quick. Like,
Ashley in the chat and Tom are talking about whether or not Dorothea seems just contained to Susie's household.
That's an interesting theory. Maybe so. I don't think she has seen her outside of her house, right?
Like maybe she's bound to like an object or something.
Oh, maybe it's that book.
Perhaps.
Isn't there a book with a picture of her in it?
Yeah, I think she has her like diary or something like that.
I can't wait to see more of that.
Yeah, she's really cool. Like Susie's one of my favorites for sure.
The only place that I think I might have seen her outside of the house, but again, it's been a minute since I've seen since I watched this episode. But I thought in the last episode or second to last episode when they're at Roz's house with Grandma, with Rose, I thought that she saw Dorothea there. But again, I could be wrong. I don't know that I'm.
Tom is shaking his head behind the scenes here, but again, like if she is bound to an object, it could be like if you have the object, she could show up. But
right.
I don't think they've told us enough yet to know exactly that. Susie tries to basically change the subject, and we get into one of me and Candace's favorite parts of the episode. She tells us that she's got a job as a Christmas elf named Jingles, and that she's always wanted this job. It appears to be the same place from the opening. We're led to believe it's a small town. It's probably the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you should come by. But as she's doing that, Sabrina's like really distracted because you have like sad Harvey like over the shoulder. Just like, I'm gonna go talk to Harvey now. And it's like an awkward conversation. His dad is drinking worse than ever. His situation is bad. He says that he still like just sees his brother when he looks at her, but it's getting better. And they were both kind of surprised that they were even speaking to each other before winter break. And she gives him a gift, and it's like the coolest gift ever, but it was kind of a ballsy move on her part because you had to think like maybe something magical might upset this dude or like trigger bad memories, but she gets him colored pencils that never go dull. They're like enchanted, and man, I want them.
Yeah,
but I don't know if this was the right choice for a gift for him. What do you
think it was a terrible gift. I think that she really was trying, but she's not thinking outside of herself. I love the fact that she didn't hesitate to buy him a witchy gift. Like I love it because I also kind of admire the fact that she went to her friends to ask for help, because I think that speaks volumes as to the depth of her love and adoration for her friends and like how much she trusts them, and B, how much she believes that magic is deeply ingrained in her person, like who she is. So to me, it's like a real, like, I agree. It was a ballsy move, but I also think that it was one that was possibly born out of innocence. Like, I don't even think she thought of it. I think she was just like, he's going to love this, and then gave it to him and didn't think about the consequences of her actions. And I think that that's something that is a gigantic bookmark in her life. Like, I think that she, like, one of the biggest issues that I think Sabrina struggles with is that she doesn't think before she acts often. Like, she's very, very reckless. And I think that this is just kind of like, I mean, it's true to her character that she would have just handed him something without even reflecting on the fact that the last time she gave him a gift, it was his dead brother.
And me and Candace are watching this like two angry moms. Like, this girl is out of control. She's reckless.
Where are the parents?
The choices she's making. You know, teenagers, they're all doing it. You know. So Sabrina, being rejected once again, goes to the academy where she said she was headed, and she asks the weird sisters for help because that's who she goes to when she cannot find anyone else to help her. And
eventually they're gonna get sick of that shit. Yeah. I'm waiting for them to be like, fuck you, go ask your other friends. Like, I'm waiting for it.
But they do it when they're interested in doing it. Like, that's how they work. Sure. There are lots of Slytherins on the board in this show. Like, many. That's why this is my shit, right? So she asked them if they want to do a seance, and they were almost like the two little side characters. I know one of them's name is Dorcas. I forget the other one's name, but they were like, what?
Agatha.
Please? Agatha, yeah. They were like, yeah, let's do it. Like, that sounds fun, like instant. And we do get to see Prudence's new bomb haircut. What do you think?
Out of control. Out of control. She looks so fly. Like, Sabrina's like, hey, guys. And she turns around all like, yes. I'm like, oh. My heart. Oh, no. True. Put the sexy back in the closet, please. I can't handle it. You're like a son. I can't look at you. Out of control. Whew. Spicy.
So are those boner birds just stuck in the collapsed mine, Tom asks. They have never told us.
Yeah.
Those birds.
That would be an awesome episode if they came back around to the boner birds and there's just like random miners down there trying to do their work, and suddenly they're like, hey, some sexy music comes on. Like, they're like, what's up?
It'd be funny if it was like season 4.
That would be wonderful. I would enjoy that. I'd be like, bring it back around. That's smart. We were waiting for that.
We then go to see Susie at work, and she is the cutest thing I've ever seen in her little elf costume. I can't even handle it. She looks like she's straight out of like the classic Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yep.
But her Santa Claus is a bummer. He is the worst. I
don't know how nobody saw that coming, that he is like a mean old man. I'm like, what kind of man runs his own Santa, but then it's like, Susie, get back to work. Like, who does that? Like, what person isn't full of holiday cheer?
I feel like he was like festive while I was doing it though. It was like jingle bells, like totally, but like festive. So Roz is on her way out after visiting Susie, and she has like a cunning moment. Something weird strikes her about the little children mannequins that are there. She looks at Susie. It's all kind of like, whoa, and she doesn't really address it at that moment. I wouldn't have left personally. I would have been like, nope.
Yeah.
This is no good. But she did leave.
And then trust herself yet.
Yeah. We soon see Susie polishing the creepy children mannequins, and like one starts to cry right as like terrifying Santa is like giving a speech about how usually he has to wait all year for like the most beautiful child, the most special child to show up, but like this time it came right to him, and he snags it in a Santa bag, like straight up Nightmare Before Christmas style, kidnapping her. And right after that, like this episode is full of like shout outs to stuff that I like, because we get Wardwell, Christine McConnelling, a beautiful gothic gingerbread house of the Spelling House.
So skilled.
Yeah, it's like she even kind of looks like her in the whole thing. But she basically uses it to do a little spell to put out the Yule log, and it's really like the most adorable evil thing I've ever seen.
I'm watching and I'm like, ooh, is it a science experiment? Is smoke going to come out of the chimney? And then they flash to the Yule log and I'm like, come on, Wardwell, you Grinch. Boo.
They're
trying to have a nice Christmas.
Spent 12 hours building the gingerbread house for the spell.
Just going to ruin it. Like, just going to ruin it. And she's so gleeful about it too. She's like, uh-oh. I'm like, you're terrible. You're just the worst. And you love being the worst. That's what I think I like about her the most, is that she is like unapologetic about loving being the worst.
Is that what you like about me the most?
Yes. Yes, it is. Sometimes Momo looks at me and I'm just like, you must be Kim's cat. This face. I'll do something stupid and she'll just look at me so judgy. I'm just like, all right, I get it.
It's just because I'm a cat, man. Like, I'm a human cat. So the girls come over and they do start performing the seance, and here we get our Beetlejuice shout out, where like the wedding dress is on the table and
it just fucking like fills.
Yeah, like the mom like appears in the wedding dress. It's literally like it's almost like it's a straight up Beetlejuice. It's not even a reverse Beetlejuice because it happens basically the same way. Sans Baldwin.
Yep.
And it's cool. Like I dug this, and they're really, really working to make that dress iconic on the show.
Agree.
Like if they hadn't done enough, this seals the deal.
Yes.
The mom looks very beautiful in the dress. Arguably not as good as Sabrina looked in it.
Agree.
She looks good. But unfortunately, the Yule log goes out thanks to Mrs. Wardwell's timing. And we hear little children like giggling, little spirits as they enter the chimney. Zelda is like on top of this stuff, man, because not very much time goes by until she notices that the log is out. And she goes upstairs to warn Sabrina and Ambrose as Hilda's, relighting the log and stuff. Teamwork, those two. And she literally walks in on them talking to Diana, and she's like, Diana? And like she disappears because they lose focus. But honestly, I think they were on their way to losing focus anyway because she was like rapid firing questions. She wasn't handling it great. And I thought that the Weird Sisters were just helpful and straight up helping in this situation. They weren't doing any shady business. I think they're nosy and they wanted to see.
Oh yeah.
But Zelda gets pissed and she sends the sisters home and accuses Sabrina of putting out the Yule log in order to have her mom come, which it actually was not her this time.
No, surprisingly. Always hijinks with that.
Though. Fair.
I think that like, I don't know, nothing's like more fucked up than what happens next, right? So like we see everybody kind of going back to like their normal, everyday Christmas or Yule chores and festivities. And that's when Zelda says to Sabrina, like, oh, I would have helped you. Like, you didn't have to get those like shitty girls. Like, I would have helped you. And she's like, what are you talking about? Are you on drugs? You would have never helped me. You would have scolded me until I went to my room and sat there all night. Like, that's what would have happened. But I love how she feels like she's genuinely hurt that Sabrina didn't come to her. Like, genuinely hurt. And that was surprising.
I believe her that she would have helped her.
Me too.
She helped her when they did that exorcism. Like she at the end of the day, she will do what she needs to do to protect this girl. Like she really does feel like the mama bear. And I think that she would have helped her and that she was hurt. Even though like it surprises me that Sabrina's like spilling the beans to everybody about Limbo, just like one after the other in this episode. So she can't really get mad at Sabrina because Sabrina has been forthcoming and more honest than she usually has. But I would be hurt too if I was Zelda in this situation because I 100% do believe that she would have helped her.
Well, especially because it's so important to Zelda that Sabrina embraced being a witch. So I feel like anything to do with witchcraft, especially knowing, kind of to Ms. Wardwell's point, knowing that she's going to do it with or without her, I do feel like, it's kind of inevitable that Zelda's going to have to come around. You know what I mean? Like Hilda is obviously, kind of more sympathetic to her human side, you know what I mean? Like her regular person side. And Zelda is definitely more receptive to the witch side, you know what I mean? And I think that Sabrina has yet to recognize that balance. Whereas I think that like Zelda is much more understood by like an Ambrose, for example. Like I feel like Ambrose understands where Zelda is. And I feel like their relationship, even though he's kind of shown more with Hilda, I feel like his relationship with Zelda is a little bit more, it's a little deeper. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they have a deeper connection with each other.
Absolutely. And we do come to find out pretty quickly that Zelda also has guilt over her relationship with Sabrina's mother. So that would be another potential reason why she would have wanted to help her.
Yeah, definitely.
So she's like dealing with the guilt of like, oh, you didn't ask me to help you, and oh, also I'm like sad about your mom, like I was horrible to her, and I could have like this maybe could have been a way that I could have helped mend that, and feel like probably a little bit of making herself feel better about it too, if we're being real. That's the type of character that she is.
Sure.
So yeah, I do think she was legit in what she was saying there. I think that woman is going to be honest with you 90% of the time.
Definitely.
We then go to December 21st, and we see Zelda playing with the little baby. And she's actually really sweet in this scene. She's like, peekaboo, like peekaboo to the baby, which is really weird to see her doing.
So I had a very different reading of that because we know that the scene is repeated in like like maybe 20 minutes after we see it for the first time. But I felt like in both instances, like it's always funny to see someone who's very gruff or like very mean or grouchy or whatever being cute. Like to me, that's hilarious. I don't know why I find it so funny, but like I'm watching it and like I'm looking at Zelda and she's being cute with the baby, but she's also kind of terrifying because she's so like hardcore. So like Hilda would have been like, "Bee, bee, bee, bee," and she's like "Brr, brr, brr, brr," to the baby, like she's really intense. And the baby's like loving it. Like the baby is loving it. Like obviously they're already bonding. Yeah, it was like really intense. I was like, Zelda, you need to chill out, lady. But yeah, so Tom down here in the chat is actually pointing out what I was about to say too. Awesome witch shout out. The Witch is definitely, up there as, in my collection of top witch movies of all time. And it was really cool to see it happen, especially because they don't follow through. Like she does the peekaboo, and at any moment, if you're a fan of that movie, you're like, no, 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 no. And then nothing happens, and the baby's fine, and we can move on, and everyone's life is back to sunshine and rainbows, But for a second, you're just like, hold on a second, show. What's happening to this baby? This is a Christmas episode.
I didn't even think about that. That's great, actually. Man, they're all over it this episode with the things.
Yeah.
My favorite juxtaposition here is that she's doing all this cutesy stuff with the baby, and then as soon as Sabrina walks in, she's like, not
you
20
again.
seconds goes by, and this woman is like, as King Lear said, how sharper than a serpent's tooth is it to have an ungrateful child, which is like the most extra shit. And I was like, I love her. This is me. I just love her so much. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, that's it.
She lays it on so thick, man. Sabrina's like, eye roll. She's just like,
what did you say?
You're talking about.
I loved it. I loved every bit about it. And then, like, of course, like with the Slytherin vibe, the serpent reference in there is just a little
very gratifying.
Top, yeah. So Sabrina makes some enchanted eggnog for Mr. Kinkle. Again, a terrible idea.
Horrible idea. I don't understand.
To help him quit drinking. This girl like has really good intentions, but
the hijinks are at a maximum.
Yes. I know which road was paved with good intentions.
Holy moly.
The Spellmans soon discover that there are a group of ghosts known as the Yule Lads haunting their household, and that they're going to be forced to call the mother of these spirits, Gryla, in order to get them to leave. And tell us about Gryla.
So I was doing some research, and I found out that both Yule Lads and Gryla are steeped in tradition. So Gryla was actually an ogress. She was known as an ogress who would actually eat and boil babies alive. But in other folkloric tales, she also was, had this same kind of background where she lost the baby. She feels, very lonely without it. So every year, particularly around Yule, she goes out looking for a baby. And if there's like a random baby just out, like a beer at a party, she'll take it. She doesn't care whose baby it is. She doesn't care what it looks like. I assume she doesn't care how old it is even, because, she seems to kind of have this air of like, not desperation because she's so strong, but just of, I don't know, of like ruthlessness a little bit. You know what I mean? Like her affectation is very rough. Like she has a very, rough exterior. She has, like her hair is really snarled. She looks like a woman of the wild. She's like wearing like these kind of like, again, ogreish clothes. Like she's wearing like what looks like a lot of fur pelts and things like that. She's like a total badass. Like she shows up in the scene, and when Zelda invites her in, she gives that quick, invocation, like, are you going to obey the laws of this house? And she says yes, and then she crosses the threshold. And like you see, I don't know who the actress is, but like you see and you feel like this power. You know what I mean? As she kind of like waltzes into the room, because she has a very big presence. This woman, you know what I mean? Like you can tell that she's like not to be fucked with. Yeah. But I gotta say, like the Yule Lads, like, so they are, I guess they're like an Icelandic folktale. of the 13 Yule lads that come and they wreak havoc around Christmas time, and like little, I guess, Icelandic children are told like, oh, the Yule lads will come and carry you away if you're not good, that kind of thing. But like, is there nothing more terrifying than like echoing faint child's laughter? Like, I think that's just awful. And the whole time I'm watching it and I'm just like, how are they dealing with this? Like, like they're messing with Hilda in the kitchen and they're going through like the pantry and everything. She's trying to make cookies and they're, tossing the flour everywhere. And, like as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, well, they must have child poltergeists in this house, because like that's a very childish thing to do. She like goes to reach for her rolling pin and it's missing and she turns around, it's somewhere else. It's like very pranky kind of hijinks.
Yeah. Like anyone who knows me well knows that I'm not the hugest fan of children for several of these reasons, but
yes,
kid ghosts are the creepiest, straight up. When me and Tom were working at the Halloween store this season, this mom came in with her kid and she was like, oh, we just want something that's scary and different. I'm like, Tom suggested, like, why don't you just make him a ghostly kid? That shit's just creepy. And the kid wasn't into it, but the mom was like, yeah, that is creepy.
So I have a coworker who has a son who like loves dark stuff. Like he loves anything that's spooky or creepy or fantastical or whatever. And like I remember I saw the first time I ever met him, he walked up to my computer and I had like a Tim Burton background that had like kind of like that Darwin's evolution of man, but it's the evolution of Tim Burton. So it's like from Victor Frankenstein to Beetlejuice to, and on and on and on. You see like, like the Martians from Mars Attacks, and you see Jack Skellington. So it's like this really cute picture. And he named all of them. And he was like 7 years old. I was very surprised and impressed by him. So we, last year we hosted like a really big Halloween event. We had a haunted house at our office. And we were like, man, what can we do to really like fuck people up? Like, how can we really scare people and just kind of put the icing on the cake? So we came up with a story about an asylum. And we were like, man, like, where can we get like something that's really just going to seal the deal? And he was like, my kid wants to join. Do you guys want a kid? So we wrote a kid into the haunted house. So like I played his mother, and I was institutionalized. There's like a whole story that went along with it. I was institutionalized and he was my son. So you'd go through the haunted house, right? And there'd be all these like adults, because it's, it's a job. Yeah. So there's all these adults scaring you and whatever. And then when you get to the end and you think that you're finally done, he like steps out, like you see like a ball bounce at the end of the hall towards your feet, and he steps out and it's like, where's my mom? It was terrifying. It was so scary.
Did he love
like
it?
He loved it, and no one expected a kid, you know what I mean? And kids are so terrifying. Like everybody, like people were dying over it. They were like leaving like, ah, because kids are creepy and sticky and terrifying.
Queen, welcome to the room. Thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Yeah, 100%. So Gryla actually starts taking the Yule boys, what is it? Yule
lads.
Away, but she hears the baby in the basement and demands that they give her the baby. Like she can immediately sense that it's like not her baby.
Yep.
Which again was my conspiracy with that's why she sent Ambrose away.
Mm-hmm.
That, oh, it doesn't like men. Like I get that, but could be this too.
Spooky.
So we get this like ultimatum that Sabrina's mother gives. She like kind of appears and she has this crowd and she's like, oh, well, I'm a mother and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to make this decision. And she does this old, I'm going to put the baby in the circle and whoever can pull out the baby gets to keep it. And we're familiar with this story, of course, but usually it's like whoever's not willing to do that to the baby is the true mother and they can keep it. But in this instance, that's not how it went down. They totally did a flip on that. And but of course we find out pretty quickly that it's a teddy bear that's like enchanted and it's not really the baby. And I thought all this stuff was cool. How'd you feel about it?
Well, first of all, big ups to Zelda for suspending her witchiness for a moment and actually giving many shits about this child and its well-being. You know what I mean? Like I'm increasingly surprised by like her soft side. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like as time goes on, she can't help but show it a little bit more. And I wonder if there's a correlation between her and Hilda. Like, I'm very interested to see how both women kind of react as time goes on, because like, as she shows all of these kind of softer bits of herself, does that then make Hilda stronger. You know what I mean? Because Hilda now is kind of coming into her own and like, you know, being her own witch, and they're not sleeping in the same bedroom. Like she even offers her, she's like, hey, you know, I figured you might be upset by all of this. So do you want me to sleep with you tonight? Because now she has her own room. You know what I mean? Like she's not sharing a room with her anymore. So I kind of wonder if that's going to be kind of like a relationship, you know what I mean? That they kind of will speak about further. I hope, like my fingers are crossed, but I did some research on what Diana said because I was very intrigued. She said that she lost her daughter, which like, at first I was like, okay, so she lost her daughter, but like Sabrina is still living. So does she mean she lost her daughter because she died, or does she mean she lost her daughter, like harkening back to that scene that we saw in the first episode where Sabrina is in the forest with the goat legs? Yes. So I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? You know, I want to know more about that. And then she said, Saint Lucia took my left hand. The demon Lucy took my right. So then I was like, what does that mean? That's interesting. So I found out Lucy, I think, is Lucifer. I think that her right hand, and it's interesting that her right hand is Lucifer. So I kind of wonder if like that's a symbol of her crossing over for Sabrina's father, because Lucia is a Catholic saint. So that's her left hand, and now her right, which in Catholicism is the important hand, is Lucy, which is a female Satan. And I don't know if that's supposed to signify Madam Satan, like perhaps Madam Satan had something to do with her death, or if that's just saying, you know, the devil, but in female form. And I also learned that Saint Lucia, so she's a martyr. She's a patron saint of martyrs and of the blind. So I also wonder what kind of symbolism that is, because in this episode, Sabrina says that her parents were killed in a plane crash. When they do the seance, they get numbers 2, 3, 3, 1. And she's like, that was the number of the plane that they had crashed in. But I feel like a wizard wouldn't have been felled by a plane crash. Like I feel like there's much more to that story than we think, especially because when she appears to Sabrina and, you know, she's in like, you know, the limbo area or whatever, it just doesn't feel like that's the case. Like if she has unfinished business and she died in a plane crash, like what does that mean, you know, on a larger scale? So like the story behind Saint Lucia actually is pretty interesting when you consider Diana, because Saint Lucia, so her mother was a widow, and she was having a really hard time raising Saint Lucia, or Lucia before she became a saint. And so she promised her to a wealthy pagan family, right? So she was like, you know, your son and my daughter can marry, and then she'll be looked after and she'll be cared for. So I guess like Lucia was like, listen, if they're really rich, then we should give away our money. You know, it's not brave to give away your money in alms when you're old, because you don't need it anymore. You can't take it with you. It's more selfless giving it when when you're living. So she gives away all the money, and when they find out, they report her for theft and they seal the deal. And the church tells her, listen, like, you know, you have to, I guess she gets sentenced to being defiled in a brothel. So they try to move her from her spot. And I guess she's like so full of the power of God or whatever that she's steadfast. She doesn't move. And then they try to burn her at the stake as a witch, and she doesn't burn. So finally they stabbed her through the heart. So her symbol is a sword. It's like a knife or whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, this idea of being promised to a pagan man, like, is that also symbolic of Diana? Because that's her story. You know what I mean? She gets promised to, you know, she's promised to Edward and she loves him. But ultimately, I think that also kind of spelled her demise, you know? So I'm super interested to see and learn more about Diana and what her story is, because I feel like that statement wasn't a coincidence. Like, I feel like that's supposed to tell us a little bit more about who she is and what her backstory is. And I'm very, very excited to learn more.
Yeah, that's all really super interesting. Man, you do so much more research than me. You're
That's okay. You do all of the remembering, so.
All of the typing it on my phone notes.
That's right.
Jason in the chat is like, why did they not just send the baby with Ambrose so that it's not in the house?
Oh, because Ambrose went to a sexy party with his boyfriend.
There you go.
That's why. He was trying to get that mac on, that holiday ham.
Your favorite character, his boyfriend.
I hate him, Lucas. He's the worst. I know something bad is going to happen to him. The scene with Ambrose was so confusing. He's like looking over the little balcony and he sees this asshole, and the asshole's not looking for him. And I'm like, fuck Lucas, man. Fuck this guy. Ambrose should just be with Nick Scratch. Everyone should just be with Nick Scratch. The end.
Well, if Nick Scratch is who Tom's theory is,
That's what I'm saying. Everyone's already with him, right?
Yeah. So Roz comes in and tells everybody that she had like a cunning vision and that she thinks like Susie was kidnapped, and the Spellmans decide that their best course of action is to call Gryla back, even though it's kind of a risky move. They know that she's going to be more concerned about this demon who like does bad things to children than this one child. So they do in fact get her to come back, and um, she does that, man. Like, she helps take this dude down, and it was pretty badass, if not short. And she ends up asking Susie, like, oh, are you alone? Do you have anyone, child? And you're all like, no. And she's like, yeah, I've got my dad. And she lets her go.
Susie's like, I'm loved. Yes.
Clearly. So if anybody ever asks you that, just be like, uh-huh.
So loved.
And Sabrina has a final conversation with her mother, who she recognizes as a lover of her family, but warns her against letting Harvey follow the same path that she did.
Mm-hmm.
So it does like seem like they're kind of putting the Harvey stuff to the side now, at least for a while. I would imagine that Harvey is probably endgame for her in this story.
Yeah.
But it does seem like they're benching him for a hot minute. He comes by and he's kind of like, thanks for that enchanted eggnog. Don't do that again. Like, straight up. Like, he calls her out, and
he gives her back her gift, right?
Huh?
He gives her back her gift.
Yes, gives her back the pencils, but is like, I think he genuinely is kind of glad his dad stopped drinking, but also he feels manipulated. You can't just make decisions for this dude.
Of course.
Ashley in the chat's like, babies are not welcome at those kind of parties.
No, they are not.
And she still believes that Ambrose's boyfriend totally killed that warlock. And
so do I. And his familiar. Yes, 100%. I do not trust him, and I do not like him, and something horrible is going to happen to Ambrose. And I feel like the Dark Lord, it was like so easy with like forgiving him. Like, oh, you're out of house arrest. No problem. We can totally work on that. I'm like, yeah? Why didn't you do it already then? Why did it take this jerk saying something? No. In cahoots. Bad idea. Bad. Don't like it.
Tom says Diana's just Madam Satan in disguise trying to get rid of Harvey.
Oh my God. Madam Satan, she needs to stop. She's everywhere.
No, because you'd be able to tell. She'd be like, maybe you shouldn't.
Sabrina would be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But she just is like, okay, no problem. She's like, maybe you should set your house on fire. She's like, where are those matches? I'm just like, what are you doing? Fucking terrible. But like Harvey, you know, I think Sabrina really tried in this episode. Like, I think she really did, man. Like, she put in time. She did work. She tried to come outside of herself. She tried to be selfless. She tried to think of him first. She really did. I feel like she gave it the college try. She just fell on her face. And that's so sad because, like, you can see the light go out of her eyes. You know what I mean? Like, she's just like, well, I've done everything I can. You know what I mean? And for her, again, going back to how ingrained magic is in her life and how normal she's trying to make it seem to her friends, like, she is, you know, she is magical. Like, that's who she is as a person. She's unable to give up the Dark Lord and her witch side, even in our first series, you know what I mean? Even in the first season, she really struggles with trying to turn away from it because it's so deeply ingrained in who she is. Like, it's very much in her soul. So it's like, in the moment when he gives her back those colored pencils and he's like, don't use magic on me ever again or anywhere near me. I want nothing to do with it. In my head, I'm like, so he's saying he wants nothing to do with her. Like, this is a whole utter rejection of who she is as a person. Like, he wants nothing to do with her. And like, I don't think that he recognizes that he's saying that because I don't think that he's smart enough or like, you know, like interested enough to recognize that. But in that moment, I think that's what she hears. She hears like, I don't want anything to do with you. You know what I mean? And she's just like, I thought we were getting better. You know, I felt so bad. Like, that really like crushed me a little bit, even though they're really boring together.
And you got to remember his history too, like his bloodline and stuff. But Jason in the chat totally disagrees with Harvey's decision. He says, dude, shouldn't he be a little more grateful to Sabrina? I understand being manipulated, but the greater good here is to get the dad to stop drinking. It's a huge gift.
True. Very true. And like, I feel like he can't see it that way because to him, it's all he's ever known. You know what I mean? Like, his dad being a drunk is normal. Like, that's not something that is like out of his ken. Like, he doesn't You know what I mean? Like having his dad drunk for another day is not something that's like life changing or earth shattering. What I found interesting was that he seems more well adjusted in the situation without his brother there. And I don't know if that's just a matter of necessity or just showing that he has his own power of moving past things and moving forward without Sabrina's help, because she hasn't re-upped her spell that she put on him in last season. So like the strength that we see in this episode is 110% him. And I think that might also have something to do with it, because she abused, his trust in the previous season by doing that protection spell. Like, he feels like he should have died alongside of his brother. So, she changed his destiny completely. And I think he's a little afraid of like what that's going to do in the long term.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I think that he's, like you said, like your brother dies when you're high school age. That's going to change who you are, and it is going to force you to grow up, especially if he's someone whose umbrella you've kind of been under, who's been protecting you this whole time. Like he doesn't have a choice but to like grow some balls and like toughen up, especially because like we're to assume that his dad is getting worse than he was, and maybe he's not more violent, but maybe he's just more absentee and completely just not even functioning anymore, which
Right.
now puts Harvey into a spot where he has to get shit done or else they can't survive,
Right. Yeah.
So it's a lot for him to deal with here for sure, like for anyone, especially someone who's his age.
Mm-hmm.
Zelda here decides to make a real grown-up decision, and a selfless one. And like you were talking about, we really see her love for this baby, because she decides that she loves this child and says really sweet things like, oh, she's a brave girl and she's a strong girl, but she decides to let her leave for the safety of the baby. She doesn't feel like she's safe here, and that she can't carry on this ruse forever, and that perhaps people are correct, and in thinking that, like, one, she's not going to be able to keep this secret forever, and two, it's a dangerous house to be in for an infant.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one thing though that I'm concerned about is that she said that she's going to send her to Desdemona. Right? Am I correct? Right? Desdemona?
I think so. I have an outcast witch in the woods.
Yeah. And I'm like, why would you send her to that lady? She's all fucked up. She can barely take care of herself. Why would you do that? Don't send her to her. Like I don't know. I mean, obviously she doesn't have a lot of options, but that lady is an outcast. And I feel like it's an interesting choice of Zelda's, because I mean, that's also Zelda acknowledging that she knows who this person is. Like, I know that we have moments where, it's briefly discussed in the previous season, but Sabrina and the audience were introduced to her by Mrs. Wardwell. You know what I mean? So the fact that she's going to send her to this witch, I'm just like, yeah, but, Zelda is super concerned about living by the witch's code and dying by the witch's code, right? Like, she's like, listen, there's a certain way that you do things when you are, within this coven, within the Church of Night, and there are definite pros and cons, like, there are regulations. Like, this is Sabrina, you need to take it seriously. Like, she's always getting on Sabrina about following the rules and making sure that she's doing right by her coven. But then she's like, you know what? I'm just going to put her with this lady in the forest. And it's like yet another kind of odd circumstantial decision by Zelda. You know what I mean? That's very unlike who we know her to be. So I'm just like, is this like a further breaking down of her character where she kind of just has to kind of assume this role of familial leader, you know what I mean? And not be as strict and not be as serious as perhaps, she was in the past.
Yeah. To speak for a kindred spirit here, who I think I understand a lot with this character, and whoever's writing her, I feel like is a person who's very similar to myself. I think her line of thought is that she doesn't know very many witches who aren't associated with the church. And her main concern is to keep her separated from the church, because she's genuinely frightened about what Father, is it Blackwood?
Yeah.
Father Blackwood is going to do to not only her, but the baby if he finds out that she even exists.
Right.
So that's like the main concern. We got to keep this kid away from the church, because the church in her mind is just this guy. It's boiling down to at a certain point. So I think that that's her line of thought. But I also understand where you're coming from. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you to this shabby hobo in the woods.
Basically.
Have fun.
Hope you're fine. Don't get eaten by a bear. Like, Jesus. But I mean, I'm very interested in the softening of Aunt Zelda, particularly because I'm curious as to how her experiences in season 1 have helped shape this moment, and how this moment, in addition to that, are going to shape who she becomes in season 2. Because like she's deeply ingrained within the church. Like she's the one that's kind of carrying the torch. She's the one saying, hey, we have to, make sure that we don't get excommunicated. Like it's really important that we abide by the rules and laws of our people. You know what I mean? Like she's the one who's so hardcore. Everybody else, like even Ambrose is like, nah, all right, whatever. And you're a witch. You're supposed to do this stuff. You know what I mean? Like he's very sarcastic kind of when he talks to Sabrina about the stuff they have to do or must do. You know what I mean? No one takes it as seriously as Zelda. So it's like, what happens to her once her identity, which is someone who's very much a sister of the faith, like what happens when that's gone? You know what I mean? Like we see, again, the sisters, I know they're not the focal point, but arguably they're some of the most interesting characters on the show. What's going to happen in this time of transition? Because you have Hilda moving up, as kind of being her own witch, being her own person. She has that romance with, Dr. Cerberus. You have Ambrose kind of moving forward, kind of flirting with the dark side, doing work for Father Blackwood, trying to get in his good graces, with this Lucas guy. And then you have, Zelda, who's softening around the edges, and she's kind of breaking down a little bit. And she's finding herself being more kind of amenable to assisting Sabrina with, the things that she would normally have, cast aside and been like, absolutely not, we're not doing this. So it's a really interesting time, I think, for the Spellman family. Like each of them is going through their own like personal, like nervous breakdown right now.
For sure. I think she, in particular, though, is one of the characters who has the most duality because, on the other hand, she was just like banging Father Blackwood and
man,
like getting super into it to the point where like I think that was kind of a religious experience for her. I think her
absolutely
and him fully was revolving around the fact of his position in the church. So
yes.
she's not fully away from her old ways either. Like that stuff really matters to her. And you ask what happens to her when she lets go of that. I don't think she knows.
Yeah.
I think that she's trying to do whatever she can for self-preservation at this point,
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, I can't wait for next season. The rest of the episode, basically, it is them reading by the fire, which leads me back to another one of my favorite moments that I forgot to bring up. I loved in the beginning of the episode when they're talking about how she doesn't like Christmas, but she likes A Christmas Carol. And she's like, yes, I like the ghosts.
Of course she likes the ghosts. Of course she likes the ghosts. She's like bringing down the hammer of justice. Fuck yeah.
Halfway, you're like, do you like Scrooge too, lady? Like... before story arc.
She's hilarious, man. I love it. And I like them all sitting around. And this is what I'm saying, to go back to one of the first things that we talked about, like the kind of swap between Satan's like satanic symbolism and imagery and terminology and Christian / Catholic, kind of Catholic forms of communication and language. Like you have Sabrina, Merry Christmas to all and all a good night or whatever, and God bless us everyone. She's like, Satan bless us everyone. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. Tiny Tim, but evil. That's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Touched my little Christmas heart.
For me, because to me, like the definitive Christmas Carol is the Muppets Christmas Carol. So that's like what I'm putting this up against in my mind. And I'm like, can I have somewhere in the middle? Like, can I have them as Muppets or like...
just like a cutaway scene, and so they're doing the seance and there's just like a dress and like hung from chicken wire. They're all just Muppets. Like I'd be into that. We need to write a letter, make suggestions for next year.
There's only one more ghost till Christmas. The musical. Sabrina can sing. Prudence can sing.
That's so cute. I'm here for it.
All right, so let's get to final thoughts for this episode. And before we wrap up for the night, we can talk about the trailer for next season a little bit as well. But final thoughts on this episode. What do you think?
So I like this episode. Not a ton happened that is relevant to the story as a whole, but I thought it was pretty cool. I wasn't super impressed by the makeup job for our villain. What is his name? Begins with a B. Bartell. I wasn't super impressed with Bartell. I thought his horns looked good, but the rest of them was kind of muddy. You know what I mean? So I hope that they kind of step up their game a little bit next time. Batty Bat didn't look too bad. But I feel like on a scale of like, grim to like movies, it's like maybe a 3. as far as goodness.
It.
Yeah, so I think we need to. I want them to work on that a little bit because like I love Monster of the Week shows. And I think that that it had pretty good character development. Like I liked the number of people that we saw. I wish we could have spent, you know, a little bit more time with Ambrose because he's always such a delight and he's wonderful in every way. I would have liked to have had a little bit more time with him and his boyfriend. Like I wish, like if there were any deleted scenes that I could watch, I would choose that scene of him finally meeting up with him and what they're talking about because I'm very, very interested to know how that kind of unfolds. And I think it was a great transition episode between season 1 and season 2. Like you don't get anything really sewn up, but you do have a lot of open doors that were opened a little bit wider this episode. You know what I mean? Which was awesome. Something for all of you out there to take a look at. I didn't get a chance to rewatch this and go frame by frame before sitting down with Kim tonight. But if anyone is interested, my recommendation is to rewatch this show just for the opening credits. I know sometimes Netflix allows you to like skip or whatever the opening credits, but the art is different in this opener. So there are actually some Easter eggs in there and some interesting. It's almost like a mini recap because they show what appears to be like a Dark Lord type figure and a baby kind of falling. So like Sabrina was promised to the Dark Lord in his book and all that stuff. So it shows that. It shows the scene with Wardwell and Ben Button, who, like I told you guys last time, is also from Riverdale. So it's interesting that he came up that was such an important part. I kind of wonder if that's going to come back around later because it was important enough to put in the opener. So just go back and take a look at that art because some of it is from last season and then some of it looks like it might be a clue to what's happening next time.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. I thought this was great. And one thing that contributed to how much I enjoyed it is that the wait was very minimal till we got this episode. I think that they got a lot of people super interested in Sabrina. And then they gave us very quickly a Christmas special, which was unexpected. And now they've been renewed till season 4 or something?
Yeah.
So they're gearing up to have a really nice successful run of this show. They're like, no, listen, this is something that's going to stay. This is not like a 1-season Netflix show. And I appreciate that a lot because I think that they're doing a really good job with it. I liked it more as a Christmas special than as a Sabrina episode. If it was in the regular season, I feel like it could have been a bit of a disappointment. And perhaps it was in there somewhere and they decided to kind of like move it, you know what I'm saying? Like move a couple things around to make it work here. Or maybe they fully intended to have this later. Either way, it's really great the way that it panned out. And I think that they made some good decisions here. I wish that Nick Scratch was in it. I picture just Nick Scratch is sitting around somewhere just basting turkeys in the meantime. You guys
lustily drinking from the baster.
Yes, we talked about that last time. So important things. And if you want to give yourself a laugh, just look up Nick Scratch in the GIF search bar on Twitter. And I sent Candace like 5 of them. But yeah, I enjoyed this at the end of the day, and I think it was really good. And it had a few moments that I'm definitely going to remember for sure. It's just as many characters as we did see, we are disappointed that we didn't get to see people like Dr. Cerberus and Nick, who are going to hopefully be a huge part of the next season. Yeah. Like literally we see more of them in the 30-second minute long trailer for it. So yeah. And speaking of the trailer, did you watch it? How do you feel?
So I did watch the trailer and I'm pretty excited. It looks like they are going kind of no holds barred in the next season. It seems like they're really not going to hold back, which I absolutely love. I think that it's going to be, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that we're not going to see coming. I'm going to continue to report back with my little research nuggets so that we can kind of discover things together. I know there's some early casting as well that's out there, including Alexis Denisof for my Buffy peeps. Alexis Denisof being Wesley Wyndham-Pryce Watcher, well, ex-Watcher, I guess. And he's also married to Alison Hannigan, so I don't know if you guys care about that. But he is supposed to be Ms. Wardwell's fiance. But I don't think he's supposed to be Ms. Wardwell, like the witch fiance. I think it's supposed to be Ms. Wardwell's fiance, like before she was taken over by Madam Satan. So it's going to be very interesting, the hijinks that Madam Satan gets up to, trying to act normal in front of her man.
Not gonna work.
No, she's gonna do one of these, and he's gonna be like, ah.
Her clothes and her hair, and immediately be like, "What is this?" He's
That's
gonna
the
be like,
thing, though.
"Did you hit your head, or are you having an affair? Which one is it?"
She's all sexy now, though, so maybe he'll just be like, "Whew, no questions asked," and kind of just go with it. He'll be like, "Show me your main lioness." She'll be like, and it'll be amazing.
But she's gonna tease this boy, and he's not gonna be used to that if that's the fiance.
Well, he's super dorky. Usually, like if you've seen him on How I Met Your Mother, he's Sandy Rivers. So like he's super.
Oh my gosh!
It's that guy. So like he's super smarmy, and like he can play super smarmy and stuffy and snobbish. He can play really laid back and like kind of jokey. He's also in Much Ado About Nothing, Joss Whedon's Shakespearean adaptation, where I think he's more smooth and slick or whatever. He's like a smooth talking kind of guy. So he has a couple of different sides to him. So I don't even know what they're going to do with his character. Like I'm not sure how he's going to be. But that's pretty interesting. And also Dorian Gray is also for some reason a character next season, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, we'll see what happens and how that pans out.
Yeah, some highlights I'm interested in that I noticed is we get like a pretty fabulous moment with Hilda, like just like feeling herself in that trailer. I don't know if you noticed it, but it's like a 10 out of 10 sassy Hilda, and it gives me life every time I watch a trailer. And then there's like a Nick Scratch dancing kind of close on Sabrina. What do we?
Oh yeah, there is.
What do you think? He's trying
I'm
to
into it.
Mr. Steal Your Girl right there.
I'm into it. I feel like this is going to be a season where she lives most of her life walking on the wild side of witchcraft. That's kind of what I see here, and I think that that's awesome. I think that's kind of what we were waiting for all this season. Like even in this Christmas episode, she kind of like dips in and out of the unseen arts. Like she's there for 5 seconds. She's like, "Hey, can you help me with my seance?" The girls are like, "Yeah, sure," and then you never see the school again. Like it's like a 2-second clip of her being in the school. So I'm just like, okay, well, maybe she'll spend a little bit more time. Maybe we'll find out a little bit more about, how their ranks kind of work within this school, and, where she fits as a human. Like now that she doesn't have to, kind of show up to her regular classes because of Harvey, and now that she has this relationship that she's formed with Ms. Wardwell, I kind of wonder if there's going to be a lot of allowance made for her be kind of spending more time in that world. I'm also kind of interested in who their new principal is going to be.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
Like, I don't know if Wardwell's just going to be, like, is she just going to be bumped up, or is it going to be the deputy principal? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are we working with?
Oh no, I didn't even think about her getting promoted.
Yep.
Oh no.
There's so many hijinks.
I think you should hire me.
She could make one hell of an argument. If anyone is going to get the job, it's her. So we'll see.
Oh, Ashley says in the chat that she thinks she saw some Sabrina and Harvey action in the trailer as well. I didn't notice that, but it might have been because it was boring.
Yeah, probably.
I just want Dr. Cerberus. Give us the damn Dr. Cerberus. Tell us what the problem is. We just want to fix it.
That's it.
Protect Hilda at all costs. All right, guys, I think we're going to start wrapping up here. If you guys ever want to talk to us about the show and while we start the long wait till next season, which I actually think it comes out in April or something, like it's soon.
Yeah, I want to say it's like April 9th or something like that.
Yeah, and April is an insane month, but we're definitely going to be recapping this. It might be in blocks of a few episodes at a time, like we did, maybe like a 2-part thing, because it'll come out all at once and then we'll binge it. But me and Candace can get a little bit long-winded, so I want to make sure that the episodes aren't ridiculously long. But we will be doing that, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, you want to start any conversations, you just want to talk about anything about this show or any other show that you know that we love, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kimberbatch_OSP. That's Kimberbatch, like Kimber and Cumberbatch. And tell them where they can find you, Candace.
So on Instagram, you can find me at Candace the Magnificent. So Candace _the_Magnificent. And then on Twitter, you can find me at that Candace girl. And if you go to any of Kimber's media, I'm sure you'll see me pop up on there because we're
besties. Ashley says that I say long-winded and she calls it insightful. So thank you, Ashley. You were ever so kind, and it was a delight to have you in the chat. We really appreciate everybody that stopped by, and we hope to see you guys next season. Hopefully you'll be watching. And to anyone who catches up on this later, thank you so much for watching, and please leave a comment so that we know that you were here, and we can tweet at you to thank you. So for now, I guess it's goodbye, and we will see you next season.
Absolutely. See you guys there.
Bye.